EndSARS massacre. Chad declares state of emergency over flood crisis. Pakistan government announces compensation for flood victims. Massachusetts woman accused of unleashing swarms of bees on officers carrying out eviction order appears in court. In Nigeria, the second anniversary of the EndSARS is underway amidst clash with security operatives, with a memorial procession at a toll gate where some of the anti-SARS campaigners were allegedly shot in October 2020. A statement credited to a popular Nigerian rapper, Folarin Falana, indicates that the procession will involve long convoy of cars passing through the purported scene of crime, with sympathizers of the victims of the massacre waving the Nigerian flags and chanting EndSARS slogan. A police officer who craves anonymity disclosed that as long as protesters do not stop, there wouldn't be a problem, because the agreement is that they don't stop, but whosoever stops will be picked up and locked up in the van. Report says heavy police presence with about 25 police cars and one Black Maria have been deployed both sides of the toll gate. In the meantime, tear gas has been fired to disperse protesters at the toll gate, making protesters and civilians fleeing the scene of the EndSARS memorial procession. Reports indicate that a journalist with Arise TV was allegedly harassed. Efforts to reach the spokesperson for the Lagos State Police Command, Benjamin Hundeyin, proved abortive as of the time of filing this report, as calls and text messages sent to his line were not responded to. Chad's leader, Mahamat Idris Deby, has declared a state of emergency as the country struggles to deal with exceptional flooding that has affected hundreds of thousands of lives. Deby said in a television address last night that the floods caused by heavy rains in the south and central areas have hit 18 of the country's 23 provinces and affected more than 1 million people. He adds that no one had yet died as a result. Meanwhile, the flood water has swallowed up more than 465,000 acres of fields and 19,000 heads of livestock. According to the benchmark of the UN's Humanitarian Development Index, Chad is the world's third poorest country. France has repatriated 40 children and 15 women from camps in Syria, holding family members of suspected Daesh militants. The Foreign Ministry said the repatriation came a week after a European Rights Court condemned France over its refusal to return 2 women detained in Syria. It marked the largest such transfer since July, when France, following pressure from campaigners, returned 35 children and 16 mothers from the Syrian camps. The camps are controlled by a democratic socialist organization, also known as the YPG, the Syrian branch of the PKK terror organization. The French government had long refused mass repatriations of the hundreds of French children in camps in Syria, dealing with them on a case-by-case basis that rights groups criticized as deliberately slow. A lawyer told the Kuala Lumpur High Court that the lawsuits that challenged the legitimacy of the dissolution of parliament last week should be dismissed, as Malaysians are set to go to the polls next month. The lawyer, former senior judge Zulkifli Ahmed Makinuddin, is representing caretaker Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob, the election committee, and the government of Malaysia as defendants. The lawsuit was filed by 3-term Clam Member of Parliament Charles Santiago last week. The Democratic Action Party (DAP) Member of Parliament wanted the EC to defer the elections, claiming that Datuk Seri Ismail's request to the Malaysian king for parliament dissolution was unconstitutional, as Mr. Ismail did not have all of his cabinet members' consensus. Mr. Santiago also cited flood risk as a concern, His constituency, Klang, was one of the badly affected zones in December last year. When flash floods killed 54 and displaced more than 71,000 people in the country. In response, Mr. Ismail and the EC have sought to strike out Mr. Santiago's lawsuit, saying that it was frivolous and an abuse of the court's process. This is the word at noon, coming to you from Osun State Broadcasting Corporation, Osogbo, Voice of the West, Nigeria. Now, our mid-news message. Honesty is the best policy. Train your child to be honest. Russia is evacuating thousands of people from Kherson after the top Russian general warned of a major battle over the occupied city. TV footage showed hundreds of people carrying bags and pets lining up to take boats across the Dnipro River because Ukrainian artillery has destroyed the city's main bridge. The front line is around 24 kilometers north of the city, but despite the impending battle, most residents were reluctant to leave their homes. The battle for Kherson is likely to rage from street to street. It is the most significant city captured by Russian forces and is the capital of a region annexed by the Kremlin last month. Pamphlets have appeared in apartment blocks across the city from both Russian and Ukrainian forces, urging people to leave ahead of the battle. The Pakistan government today announced compensation for the families of those killed and injured during the recent devastating floods as relief and reconstruction activities continue in the South Asian country. Speaking at a high-level meeting today, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said the federal government will give 1 million Pakistani rupees per head to the families of those who lost their lives. He added the Chinese government will send winter tents for the affected families as winter draws near. According to the National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA data, so far 1,725 people have lost their lives, including 643 children and 348 women, while 12,867 others have been wounded across the country since mid-June. Drenching monsoon spells and apocalyptic floods have flattened hundreds of thousands of houses, schools, and hospitals and wiped out huge swathes of agricultural land. Energy analysts say Indonesia is on track to secure a clean energy partnership with rich countries when it hosts a G20 summit in November, obtaining international funding to cut its reliance on coal power and to implement a green and fair transition. The multi-billion-dollar agreement is expected to help Indonesia discontinue with coal-fired plants, and ramp up investment in renewables, backed by wealthy nations, development and private banks, and philanthropists. Fabi Tumiwa, head of the Indonesia-based Institute for Essential Services Reform, an energy and environmental think tank, said the deal would be unveiled at a forum of leaders of the world's top 20 economies holding mid-November. According to him, it has the potential to be a big win for the presidency of Indonesia's Joko Widodo, while serving as an example to other G20 and coal-producing nations that are planning a shift to cleaner energy, such as India and China. A 55-year-old Massachusetts woman is facing several assault and battery charges for allegedly releasing a swarm of bees on a group of sheriff's deputies as they tried to serve an eviction notice. Pori Woods, who lives in Hadley, is accused of carrying out the attack while officers from Hampden County Sheriff's Department were dealing with an eviction notice at a home in Longmeadow. She arrived in an SUV towing a number of beehives beehives and started shaking them, breaking the cover of one and causing hundreds of bees to swarm out and initially sting one deputy in an effort to stop the eviction. An official department report has it that the culprit put on a beekeeper's suit to protect herself and was eventually arrested, but not before several more staff were stung, including 3 who are allergic to bees. Report says Woods could have faced more serious charges if anything worse had happened to those stung. Here again are the highlights of the world at noon. In Nigeria, tear gas was fired to disperse protesters at the toll gate as protesters and civilians alike are currently fleeing the scene of the EndSARS memorial procession in Lagos State. Chad's leader, Mahamat Idris Deby, has declared a state of emergency as the country struggles to deal with exceptional flooding that has affected hundreds of thousands of lives. The Pakistani government today announced compensation for the families of those killed and injured during the recent devastating floods as relief and reconstruction activities continue in the South Asian country. A 55-year-old Massachusetts woman is facing several